Dr. Judith Weaver is going to present an interesting presentation on prenatal experience and how that impacts the present. And so she'll be connecting contact and attachment in this discussion about how both prenatal experiences create and influence contact and attachment and take us into the present. Dr. Weaver is a teacher and a counselor, and she holds a PhD in Reichian psychology. She's the creator and the founding chair of the Santa Barbara Graduate Institute PhD program in somatic psychology. She's taught at the California Institute of Integral Studies for 25 years, as well as at other graduate schools in the Bay Area. And she's a founding faculty member at the Naropa Institute, now Naropa University in Boulder, Colorado. She created its Tai Chi Chuan program, and she's certified in Reichian therapy, somatic experiencing massage, biodynamic craniosacral therapy, pre and perinatal therapy, and she's a teacher of Tai Chi Chuan. She's also a senior teacher of the Rosen method and sensory awareness. Dr. Weaver met Eva Reich in 1981 and became her student and good friend until she passed in 2008. Thanks so much, Dr. Weaver.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here. I have enjoyed this conference and have learned a lot, and am super honored to be asked to talk again and about one of my favorite subjects. So that's pretty neat. But first, I have an announcement to make. I've asked Renata permission to share this news with you, but just a few days ago, we received notification from the Prenatal Sciences Research Center, SOFIA, which annually recognizes the exceptional contributions of individuals whose work has transformed understanding of life before birth and its impact postnatally. And they've just announced the 2025 inductees into their Hall of Honor. And this year, they've announced 6 remarkable pioneers, 4 of whom I know and have worked with. And the most remarkable and the only posthumous one is our dear Eva Reich. They wrote to Renata that Dr. Eva Reich has been voted for induction into the Hall of Honor 2025 in recognition of her enduring contributions to the field of prenatal sciences. The Institute said, quote, "This honor acknowledges the extraordinary impact of her life's work, the pioneering ideas, the tireless dedication, and the spirit of care that she brought into the world. Though she is no longer physically with us, her legacy continues to inspire us and guide this field forward. On behalf of all those your mother's work has touched directly or indirectly, we thank you. This recognition is not only about the past, it is a bridge into the future we are building together, one rooted in dignity, deep listening, and the shared care for life before birth. With admiration and gratitude, they have informed Renata." And it's very interesting how well this announcement in honoring Eva connects and fits into my talk to you today. Of course, Eva's work and teachings connect deeply with what they are talking about. And there is going to be a ceremony of awarding things, I think, later on in the year. But in the book, Children of the Future, in chapter 1, is a brief statement that comes from an interview that Wilhelm Reich, with Reich, that was done in 1952 by Kurt Eisler of the Freud Archives. And the title is "The Source of the Human No," N-O. I've, for many, many years, given this to all of my students and all of my classes, except the Tai Chi classes. And when I last spoke in 2023, I read it as a part of my presentation. And today, David is going to play the tape so you can hear Reich's voice and spirit. Okay, David, can we do it?
When a child is born, it comes out of a warm uterus, 37 degrees centigrade, into about 18 or 20 degrees centigrade. That's bad enough. The shock of birth, bad enough, right? But all that, it could survive if the following wouldn't happen. As it comes out, it's picked up by the legs, yes, and slapped on the buttocks. The first greeting, slap. The next greeting, take it away from the mother, right? Take it away from the mother. I want you all to listen here. That would be incredible. Take it away from the mother. The mother must not touch and see the baby. And the baby has no body contact after having had 9 months of body contact, yes, at a very high temperature, what we call the organotic body energy contact. The field action between them, the warmth, the heat. Then, the Jews introduced something about 6,000, 7,000 years ago. I don't know why they introduced it, still a riddle. And that is circumcision. But take that poor penis, right? Take a knife, right? And start cutting. And everybody says it doesn't hurt. Get it? Everybody says no, it doesn't hurt. Or it says, oh, the child, that's an excuse, of course, a subterfuge, that the sheath of the nerves are not developed yet. Therefore, the perception in the nerves is not developed yet. Therefore, the child doesn't feel a thing. Now, that's murder. Circumcision is one of the worst maltreatments of children, and what happens to them, if you just look at them, they can't talk to you, they just cry. What they do is shrink, yes, contract, get away into the inside, away from that world. I express it very rudely, but you understand what I mean. And that's a greeting, right? Taking away from the mother, mother mustn't see it. 24 or 48 hours eat nothing, right? Penis cut, and then comes the worst. This poor child, this poor infant, tries always to stretch out and to find some warmth, to find something to hold on to. And it goes to the mother's, this is slips to his mother's nipple. What happened there? Nipple is cold, or it doesn't erect, or the milk doesn't come, or the milk is bad, right? And that is quite general. That's not just one case in 1,000. That is general, that's average. And then you ask why the world is in a mess, right? Now what does that infant do? What does that infant do to that? How does it respond to that? How does it have to respond bioenergetically? It can't come to you, yes, and tell you, oh, listen, I'm suffering so much and so much. It just cries. And finally it gives up. It gives up and says no. It doesn't say no, you understand? But this is the emotional situation. And that we know. We get it out in our patients. We get it out from their emotional, from their behavior. Not words. Words can't express that. It's not represented in the unconscious. Here the spike develops. Here develops the no, the big no.
Looks like that's the end of this.
Okay. There were just 2 more words, the big no of humanity. That's fine. That's close enough.
I hope that was loud enough for everybody to hear.
I hope.
Yeah.
That is so moving to me. I mean, we can feel his spirit and his voice. Thank you very much, David, for doing that. And how immediately Reich mentions, this was 1952, and he immediately mentions consideration of pre-birth and birthing, about coming out of a warm uterus, 9 months of a high temperature, the shock of birth. He mentions difficult situations that are real, and some have been improved upon in our more modern world, definitely, and some have not been improved. There are now birth doulas whose sole activity is to support pregnant and birthing mothers. The midwives take care of the birth. The doulas are for the mother. Doula comes from the Greek word that means slave. they can introduce various activities that can support the mother and the baby when it's born and make much easier the strenuous activity of birthing. For instance, the sacred hour of quiet and skin-to-skin contact, which is sometimes called kangaroo care. It's so important after such a big occurrence, and nobody is really thinking about that, but the doula can support the baby and the mother for that. And sometimes the newborn is laid on the mother's stomach, and actually the baby pushes up to find the mother's nipple. I don't know if it's through scent or what, but babies can push up their mother's body and latch on by themselves. You can imagine how stupendous that is after probably an intense journey. So there are many various natural and supportive considerations that can make life more pleasant for the mother and especially welcoming for the neonate. In a 1996 article that Dr. Morton Hershkowitz wrote in the APA Journal, APA is the Association for Prenatal and Perinatal Psychology and Health. And the journal, which was founded in 1983, is the Journal of Prenatal and Perinatal Psychology and Medicine. They're both going quite strongly even today. Dr. Hershkowitz published in volume 8, number 4, so it's been going on for quite a while. And he mentioned that Reich's earliest writing concerning problems of infancy was published in 1928. He quotes Reich saying, quote, "Organic contact is the most essential, experiential, and emotional element in the interrelationship between mother and child, particularly prenatally, and during the first days and weeks of life. We know little about it yet. Let us therefore explore it further," unquote. Reich wrote this in 1928. The Orgonomic Infant Research Center was founded in New York in 1949 with two main focuses. The first was prenatal care, and the second was birth and the first few days of life. And of course, Reich said that if he was going to treat the baby, he had to treat the mother also, which is, of course, the only way to try to work with the child. That is, working with the persons who have created the situation with the child. Children of the Future, the book that has been mentioned several times in this conference, was first published in the US in 1950 by the Oregon Institute Press. Some of the chapters have been copyrighted much earlier, even in the 20s and 30s. After the first chapter, which you just heard a portion of, the next chapter is entitled Children of the Future, and it's a report on the Orgonomic Infant Research Center given by Reich at the Second International Orgonomic Conference in August of 1950. Reich said the basic structure of the OIRC's work had to be concentrated on the developmental process from conception through delivery, up to the age of about 5 or 6, and that 4 major groups of study had to be established. 1, prenatal care of healthy pregnant mothers. 2, careful supervision of the delivery and the first few days of the newborn's life. 3, prevention of armoring during the first 5 or 6 years of life. And 4, study and recording of the further developments of these children into well after puberty. About the first group, Reich stated, quote, "We soon learned that almost nothing was known about the emotional factors in pregnancy," unquote. I think he was mainly speaking about the emotional factors of the mother, but I would like to suggest that the emotional factors of the prenate also need to be considered. And there are so many other possible aspects that we could become more aware of, especially communication, connection, not just physically, but emotionally, environmentally, some might even say psychically. Later on, towards the end of this report of the work of OIRC, Reich says, quote, "If no severe damage has already been inflicted on it in the womb, the newborn infant brings with it all the richness of natural plasticity and development. The infant is not, as so many erroneously believe, an empty sack or a chemical machine into which everybody and anybody can pour his or her special ideas of what a human being ought to be. It brings with it an enormously productive and adaptive energy system which, out of its own resources, will make contact with its environment and begin to shape that environment according to its needs." Unquote. One of the facts we now know that expands our consciousness and ways of working in consideration the whole situation of pre-birth and birth and life is that the female fetus develops her entire supply of eggs while she is about 4 months old in her mother's womb. The eggs that will eventually become a woman's children are formed while her mother is still developing in her grandmother's wombs. That sort of turned my mind around. That means that the potential for a woman's existence and experiences and traumas, etc., is linked to her grandmother. As she carried the eggs, they would later be passed down. This knowledge has changed a lot of people's thinking about birth and birthing and heredity, and it has named a new aspect of working with possible issues called intergenerational trauma. And yet our work begins dealing with all of this and includes various forms of contact: touch, presence, sensing, awareness of breathing, communication, talking, singing, tapping, somatic consciousness, etc. Learning begins in the womb, or life begins in the womb, or before. Of course, professionals need to start with adults so they can pass the good experiences onto the baby. Surely we adults do pass on experiences and feelings to the baby in body, life, and in utero, good and not so good. Our job is to help adults know what is possible and to help them become aware of what we are doing and how and why and what we are passing on to others, especially the vulnerable prenates and infants. I'd like to give you some examples of experience that tell us a lot about this. In the specific work that I've been trained in, we support mostly adults who want to face and understand their prenatal and natal traumas. There are, as you can imagine, many very poignant experiences and awarenesses that may become conscious and unlock and clarify incidences, naggings, feelings that may have been uncomfortable and upsetting throughout a person's whole life. Of course, the work is mostly nonverbal, but that doesn't mean that the prenate didn't hear and react to what may have been happening in the outside world while they were inside. Some years ago, I saw an Italian television commercial that was very, very impressive, where the fetus was rocking in rhythm to some beautiful music. It was beautiful and peaceful. And then all of a sudden there were some loud shouts and the fetus jumps in reaction and then settles. And there was music again. And then sounds of a plate or something ceramic breaking and another loud voice. And the prenate, of course, acts severely again. It was a deeply effective demonstration on a TV commercial against domestic violence. On the other hand, I recall drumming on my large belly and receiving some nicely rhythmic variations in return. So there was a lot of communication, or can be a lot of communication, if we are willing to communicate. I'm told that in ultrasounds, babies have been shown in ultrasounds holding on to knots in the umbilical cord or even trying to kink them. I've not seen that myself, but I hear reports about that. The umbilical effect is a phrase commonly used in prenatal circles. It is used relating to physical effects such as nutrition. When something has been eaten by the mother that can be upsetting, it can also affect or upset the prenate. This also occurs with emotions. Prenates and young children are not able to differentiate between their own emotions and that of someone else. If there's a strong emotion, which is not an uncommon occurrence in life, it is easily taken on by the unborn or by the young child. A very important guidance to new or future parents would be explaining how sensitive the little one's consciousness is and how crucial it would be to differentiate, to talk to the baby born or preborn and differentiate the emotions. For instance, mommy is having a hard time and isn't happy. She's going to cry. It's not you. I just need to cry. Or mommy and daddy are angry with each other. This has nothing to do with you. We both love you. You know, communications, alerts can go a long way. Just acknowledging what's happening for the adult and also sharing it with the prenate or the infant. And then there's the lost twin experience, sometimes called vanishing twin syndrome. And it's found to be much more common than we thought in the past. It's a phenomenon that occurs during pregnancies involving multiple embryos. In this condition, one twin or sometimes multiple siblings disappear from the womb, typically in the early stages of pregnancy. The vanished twin is either reabsorbed by the surviving sibling, the placenta, or the mother's body, leaving little to no trace. But it does have an effect on the remaining children. Sometimes a strong effect occurs and may last with the remaining child or children for many years. One of my experiences in this area was with a beautiful pair of twins that I had the honor to work with many years ago. There were enough issues that took my attention, and I worked with them, helping the family settle and accommodate many needs. Not too long ago, almost 2 decades later, the mother contacted me, and I was so happy to learn how well and what the twins were doing. She even sent me a booklet that the two had created and published. It was stories of a journey they took. I don't recall whether it was imaginary or real, but they both wrote this about this journey. And in it, I was surprised to see that in all their adventures, there was another person with them. On every page of the accounts, there was a teeny third person with a name and who was definitely considered important by both of them and who added information to the whole situation. When I was working with these twins, I had never thought about a lost twin, but they seem to be dealing with it very, very well. And now we have many more variations of conceiving children, many more complicated ways of fertilizing, freezing, surrogacy, more than just the too old-fashioned two parents version. And there are also so many more different ways and experiences that we need to be aware of and encompass in these journeys of fertilizing, gestation, and birthing, even before we have a child in arms and onto contact and attachment. These need to be considered in supporting and helping the children grow and deal with their experiences. A lovely infant who had an easy birth and loving, well-caring parents was brought to me. All seemed well, but there was something that obviously was bothering the parents because something was bothering her. She cried a lot, and the parents felt that she just didn't settle into her life with ease and happiness. She had been implanted with other embryos, and the parents were so happy to have her and kept telling her that all the time. And they thought that was enough, assuring her that they were so glad that she was here. I must admit, I felt the father was becoming a bit impatient with his baby's unhappiness. I had an inkling that her grief was deep and maybe about something else. So I went on my hunch and I suggested that the parents do a memorial for the others that had been implanted and hadn't made it all the way. Light candles, talk to them, thank the others, maybe include them in whatever ceremony they wanted. The parents said it definitely helped the infant settle down into her life, and a weight was lifted from them. There are many books and other information on these subjects now. And some of the main people who have been very active in the field are Thomas Verney, who is a Canadian psychiatrist. And in 1982, he co-authored The Secret Life of the Unborn Child. In 1983, he founded the Pre- and Perinatal Psychology Association of North America that we call APA, and I mentioned it before. And Eva Reich presented in APA's first conference in Toronto in 1983, I guess it was. In 1986, he founded the journal in which Dr. Hershkowitz wrote the article that I mentioned before. Recently, well, in 2002, Dr. Verney published Tomorrow's Baby, The Art and Science of Parenting from Conception Through Infancy. And Dr. David Chamberlain was a California psychologist who in 1974 began using hypnotherapy with his clients. And through that, he discovered much about traumas arising in the womb and at birth. In research with mother-child pairs in 1980, he demonstrated that birth memories were reliable memories. His books were The Mind of Your Newborn Baby and Windows to the Womb, revealing the whole baby from conception to birth. When he was president of APA, he agreed to post Reich's The Source of the Human Know, that statement, that page that I am so in love with. Ray Castellino, who was my main educator in this field, named his clinic BEBA, Building and Enhancing Bonding and Attachment. And I remember Bowlby's son coming and visiting one of our classes. And in group work for adults, they're very small groups to work on their prenatal issues or birthing issues, and they're called womb surround. And there is a lot of work of trusting, really settling in, really everybody being able to feel and communicate before any of the more potent work is done. And then William Emerson, who some of you may know, he published The Vulnerable Prenate in 1996. And I'm impressed how so many of these people started working in this area quite a long while ago, and how so many of them were men. More recently, Dr. Alessandra Prenatally, who is a child psychotherapist and psychoanalyst with the University of Milan, she's also been part of the teaching staff at the Tavistock Clinic. She uses ultrasound scans in pregnancy, which make it possible now to observe the fetus undisturbed in the womb. And her book in 2015, From Fetus to Child, presents how she observes these fetuses, singles and twins, in the womb, and then observes their development, following them at home from birth up to the age of 4 years. Her discoveries strongly support data on the remarkable behavior and psychological continuities between prenatal and postnatal life. And currently there are various researchers and psychologists exploring the concept of womb memory. And there is now great interest in prenatal communication between mother and baby. One of the most popular currently is Akira Ikegawa, who is an obstetrician gynecologist who runs a clinic in Yokohama, Japan. He's been researching prenatal memory since 2000. One of his books is entitled Parenting Begins from a Baby's Time in the Womb. And I also remember early books that he put out with titles like, I remember my time in mommy's womb. And these were statements from the children, what they remembered and how their experiences were. Speaking of books, there's a very thick book, 948 pages, that was first published in German, then in English, and I think republished in German again and added, and has changed a lot. It's now called The Handbook of Body Psychotherapy and Somatic Psychology. In the first editions of German and English, Wilhelm Reich was named the father of body psychotherapy, and Elsa Gindler was the mother of somatic psychology. I was honored to be asked to write the chapter of Gindler, which I entitled The Influence of Elsa Gindler. While not a psychotherapist, Gindler profoundly influenced body awareness and somatic education. By 1913, she opened her studio, and she had developed a way of working with breath, relaxation, and tension, and emphasized individual exploration of experiences. Attention to the breath was basic. Breathing was a teacher. Simply being attentive to it is a way of learning what needs to change for fuller functioning and thus in the whole person. She did not teach others what they ought to be, but only guided them to find out how they were. Yesterday, there was someone towards the end of the day who spoke that she and her friend were working with children. And I wondered, I didn't see her this morning anyway when I looked, but RIE, Resources for Infant Educarers, is in the United States and other places in the world. And this is a direct connection from Elsa Gindler through Emmy Pickler, a pediatrician, to the woman who brought this work to the US. But I'd like to share with you the history that brought Reich to consider and use the influences of this simple somatic work that changed his work and probably, at least I think so, created the world of somatic psychologies and therapies. Reich's second wife, Elsa Lindenberg, had studied with Gindler in Berlin, as had his best friend's wife, Claire Fenikel, who eventually brought her husband Otto to class. And Otto was very impressed because his migraine headaches went away, and he shared the information with his colleagues. Claire said of her experience, quote, I got my husband to go too, and he was very interested. Later on, he would have me talk to his psychoanalytic groups about the Gindler work, and then we would all discuss it, unquote. Annie Pink, Reich's first wife, also studied the Gindler work with Claire Fenikel. And Eva Reich remembers the many Sunday picnics of the close friends, the Reichs and the Fenikels, where her father would assiduously question Claire about Gindler's work. And he would ask, now tell me, what is it that you do? Of course, there isn't all that much, and it would have been hard to explain because there are no exercises or specific patterns. Elsa Lindenberg studied with Gindler in Berlin and also studied with Claire Fenikel while she was living in Norway with Reich. The Fenikels and Reich moved to Norway. And Eva Reich felt that the vicarious knowledge of Gindler's work and the direct influence of Lindenberg definitely had an effect on her father's beginning much more aware of his psychoanalytic clients' breathing and body state, movements and positions while working with them. In a long ago interview, Claire Fenikel shared how their group in Norway noticed that Reich was changing. He was having his clients come to their sessions in loose, soft clothing that could be more comfortable to stretch and move in. And a quote from Claire says, quote, you know, like soft clothing, comfortable clothing, where you could move and lie down on the floor and so on. That is how Reichian technique developed. End of Claire's quote. Elsa Gindler's approach, encapsulated in terms of sensing, eventually enriched therapeutic practices across a spectrum of psychotherapeutic and bodywork fields, and is still doing so today. In that big book I mentioned, I just found a quote the other day that says, in Western psychology, paying attention to and working with bodily states is a relatively recent phenomenon. Little systemic attention was paid to this issue prior to the work of Wilhelm Reich, less than a century ago. Unquote. So enough of my words. I'd like to really bring all of this together and share an example with you of some of the somatic explorations that I think can be so important to people, clients, students today, and that seem to be making such a big difference in the lives and consciousness of many. I am doing this work because it is so important for contact, mainly initially with oneself, for bonding, initially with mother and oneself, and then being able to extend to others, for understanding and well-being, for experiencing life as fully as possible. In today's world, with so many devices and opportunities that lead us in other ways, to lose ourselves in numerous unrealities, etc., it's even more crucial, not just for babies, but for all of us, to feel, to sense, to be connected with some realities, to be able to feel and experience self-regulation, and to be able to respond naturally and fully as much as possible or as feels real. From what my words are, you can probably understand that I'm an older person. I've never been on Facebook or any of those so many things. And I'm having trouble with some of what is happening in the world. But I'm wondering, here we are. I've been talking for about how long? And we've been sitting a lot these past few days. And I wonder what you have felt. Did my words have any effect on you? Or as you heard other people? And if so, what was it? If you're tired of sitting and perhaps you want to stand up, maybe walk around or stretch. Have you done that? What have you been feeling? Are you comfortable? Do you need a drink of water? Did anything I say make you uncomfortable? And how did you respond to that? There are so many, many possibilities in our life. How we feel, how we respond. And I wonder, for instance, how you have been sensing your own breathing during my talk. If you have been sensing your own breathing, many people, of course, don't. And where in you do you feel it, or do you not feel it? Can you touch where you feel the movement of your breathing? Can you just take your hand and touch there? And if you do, what happens? And after you touch, if you take your hand away, what happens then? What is your experience of yourself? What else in you might you be aware of? If your eyes have been open, probably since you do have the screen in front of you, what happens if you allow your eyes to close? And does that change anything for you? Does that change your sense of how you feel yourself sitting? Does it change your breathing? I've been asking you about your breathing and touching with the hand, and we've all been in these little computer squares so much of the time these past few days. But I wonder if you are aware of anything in your feet. Are your feet touching the ground? What happens if you would just move your feet? Maybe move one foot, just moving one foot, and see what happens in you by just moving one foot. We do this all the time, every day, but we don't pay much attention to it. And if we bring that one foot back to resting where it was, does the foot that moved feel different than the foot that didn't move? And is your attention paying attention to this breathing in your foot movement? Does that change your sense of breathing anywhere? If there is still one foot that moved and one foot that didn't, how do both of your feet feel now? Is one very different from the other? And again, where in you, anywhere in you, do you feel you're breathing? Is there any sense of movement of your breathing in your back? And what happens if you just take up one arm and reach it upward? And as you do that, do you notice any changes in your breathing? Do you notice any changes in your back? Maybe the balance of how you are sitting or standing just by the movement of your one hand. And if you slowly allow it to come back down, what might you notice in your back, or the change of your weight, or your balance, or your breathing? And where does this arm come back to rest on your lap or hanging at your side, whatever it is? And do you notice any difference in the arm that moved and the arm that didn't? And again, these are so many things that we do all the time, every day, and don't pay much attention to. But if we did pay a little bit more attention to it, I wonder what would happen. Now, if you have the one arm that you lifted and the other arm that you didn't, is there a difference? Whether you're standing or sitting, looking or not, what is it in you that you're feeling right now? And David or someone, I could use a time check-in.
Yes, it is now 2:20 and we are scheduled to go until about 2:30.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So what I would like to do is to I'm not good with computers. I just figured out how to see you on my screen, which is really neat. I wonder if those of you who have not stood up, if you would just come up to standing slowly. I mean, we do this 1,000 times a day, maybe, up and down and up and down, but what happens for you to get up slowly? How you have to change weight, how it affects your breathing, your balance. And if you, like me, have been sitting mostly for these past few days, how does this feel?
Very good.
Great. We do this all the time, but we don't pay attention to it. We are so skillful, and we're not getting a lot of the pleasure that we can from it. So however this feels, and however you may want to move, is that. Or maybe your breath is telling you something. And is your breath, as you feel it now, different than it was a few minutes ago when I suggested you feel it? There are so many possibilities, so many changes. You know, the infants are feeling this all the time. They don't have the words, but I really do think they're feeling it. We have the words and we've lost the feelings and the connections with it. So maybe it would be nicer if we could all become more like babies again. And for those of you who are standing, since we don't have that much time, if you come back to sitting any way you want, and how is your sitting now? Is it different than, or are you different than you were, what, 5 minutes ago? And maybe since we don't have that much time or space or everything, just turning your head to one side and the other, which is something else we do a lot, and feeling you're turning a small part of you, but what else is happening in you? Maybe your back muscles are moving. Maybe your balance changed. And can you do the same thing? Most of us were looking. How about closing your eyes and making the same movements? do you feel these same movements differently? Of course, eyes and eye contact, as Peter brought up, of course, they're so essential, and we use them so fiercely. But what happens if for a minute you stop looking, you even stop seeing and feeling more inside? So it's so interesting. We're not doing anything unusual. All the things we're doing are a part of our everyday life. And this is not very foreign. What I think is foreign is our paying attention about feeling what we are feeling. And I think of Reich's words where he says, and you ask why the world is in such a mess. I think that paying more attention or not taking that attention away from the children could be very helpful. And a quote that comes from the publication from the Orgonomic Infant Research Center appeals to me, and it says, "Let the children themselves decide their own future. Our task is to make them capable of deciding for themselves and not to destroy their natural powers to do so." End of the quote. I think this is about time now. Yes, David?
Actually, we started a little bit late, 5 minutes later than we planned, so you can end anytime or take another, 5 minutes. It's up to you.
Well, I can go on doing this I think this is important, very, very for work. But I would like to hear if anyone.
Yeah, I was going to say, do we want to open up for some feedback and questions? Does that work?
Camera down, right?
Yes.
Because I think I see Harry
Paulette
Lewis had his
LaChance.
hand up. Paulette's got her hand up.
Okay, I think Paulette was first.
Yes, hello, Judith. Hi. I really appreciate what you're talking about because I do Tai Chi and Qigong and yoga a lot. And I really believe that's what's helping me. Now I'm moving on to meditation and I'm trying to change behavioral patterns. And I feel a lot of depression and scared, like a void. And I'm wondering, I have this void that makes I feel hungry, but nauseous. And I'm wondering, like, is it really just emotion? Can it be that bad? That it's just emotion that could cause that?
Just emotion?
Yeah, could it just be like when I'm so determined to change behavioral patterns now, to love myself, to take care of myself, and it's just causing. And now when you said to feel, I felt even more of this void that I can't stand it, So I'm wondering, is that void and that feeling of hunger, can it really just be emotion? Because we can always go into hypochondria and say, oh, I have this, I have that, So that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, that is a question I could not answer just, from these
Right.
2 seconds, although I think you're on the right track, except having been a Tai Chi practitioner since 1968, that is wonderful, and yoga and Qigong and everything. And this is without that structure. So
Right.
this is to help you find your own structure, your own needs of the moment. Let go of structure. So there's the yin and the yang. Both of them are really, really can be very helpful. And I want to wish you well on your strong journey.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate and I believe so much in Reich and his neurosis, and he didn't have enough time to be analyzed himself. He had a lot of issues, And he even acknowledges it in all of his writings and his journaling, you know, he's just so humble and he's so open, you know, and I just love him so much. I'm learning so much about it.
Yeah,
I'm
me
glad
too.
you met Eva.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, Johanna Klemenko. Unmute. There you go.
This was just exquisite, and as is always my experience of experiencing you, it's you have a quality of being like a warm embrace, and it's also so timely for me because I'm in the midst of reading the book that was just published by a English academic on Elsa Gindler. I'm sure you're familiar with it, Rebecca Lucas. It is so unevocative of what the work was. And I know it's very difficult to write about it, but experiencing it directly with you is the antithesis of something that goes into more and more obscure realms. Are you familiar with the book?
No, I'm not at all.
Okay, I'll send you the information about it. But it's kind of like a caricature of how academic work can get more and more obscure. And this really brought it to the most elemental level, as does your writing about it. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
There's someone asked if you could, if Johanna could put the name of the book in the chat.
As soon as I can find it, I am also of the same generation that's technologically challenged. I have the book on my Kindle.
What's it called?
It's got a very abstruse name.
Okay.
But it's Rebecca Lucas, I believe Loukes. But you know what I can do, David, is as when my technical support comes home, I can send it to you and then you can send it to everybody.
Thank you. Renata?
Oh, Judith, it's me, Renata. Hi, I just enjoyed this so much and wish that we were in real life near each other to hug each other. Thank you. I've been this afternoon going through some of my mother's drawings. So I found, I don't know if this will show up, but Eva drew this. A cow and a calf, and so this was around 1952, and but there yeah, anyway, so two things as a midwife in my life that I want to sort of add to what you've said and hear what you think, but is at the same time that we honor the prenatal existence of the baby and understand this important development, important time, I also want to be a voice for women's right to choose. And Wilhelm Reich felt that way also. My mother Eva felt that way strongly. I, throughout my entire life as a woman and as a midwife, I feel that women, that we really will only reach that new humanity when we have wanted children, and birth control does fail, and women, and so because I think sometimes in the prenatal psychology realm, it can be confusing to understand how choosing abortion, how does that sort of mix into this, but a woman's right to choose in my mind is very paramount. And the other thing is one experience came to me that I'm imagining you've had these kind of things happen, but this was a patient in her 20s, wanted very much to become pregnant and became pregnant with a loving partner. And when she was just early in the first trimester, or maybe around 11 weeks, she said to me, "Why do I feel like this is a terrible thing that I am pregnant? Why? I wanted it. He wanted it. Everything. I feel now that I'm pregnant like it is the end of the world." And you know, I have 20 minutes in the office with her, but I was able in a short period of time to understand. I said, what was it like for your mother when she got pregnant with you? And this young woman said, well, she was 15 and it was a terrible thing. But we don't really talk about that. And that's, you know, it's fine now and all this and so forth. But it, in my very quick assessment and not being a psychologist, it was quite clear to me that this was why my pregnant young woman now felt like it was a terrible thing, because that emotion was the main emotion for a lot of the pregnancy. While
Marinated in it. Yes.
yeah. So anyway, that's it. Thank you so much.
Mhm. Thank you, Renata. Yeah.
Okay, if we have no hands and we are out of time, so